Hello friends, welcome back to my channel Psychology Point. In this video I am going to present part 2 of chapter 4 revision which we were doing. Okay, so let's start. In this particular video I am going to discuss the next two topics of the chapter, that are classification of psychological disorders and factors underlying abnormal behavior. And as we did in the first part, I would be also discussing with you some of the questions which could be asked in the viva examination also from these two topics. Yes, students, classification. First of all, you should know why the classification of psychological disorder is essential, which you all must have done in your when you were doing this chapter. That is, they will enable these users like psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers to communicate with each other. Okay, the first purpose is this. Second purpose is in helping us to understand the causes of various psychological disorders and the processes which are involved in their development and maintenance. Okay, like just you must have, when you had studied this chapter, then you must have learned that just like for physical disorders, when we go to a normal physician, then he has to refer us to some specialist. Okay, so that way he has certain criteria कि okay, if it is a stomach related problem, then he can suggest some gastrointestinal expert or a specialist, isn't it? Same way here also, if the people in the same profession like psychiatrists, counselors, they have to communicate with each other, they have to send you to the other person, other specialist for that purpose, then they need such classification. Not only this, but when we are categorizing certain characteristics, certain symptoms, we are categorizing it into a group, then we learn about that disorder. Okay, now this classification consists of various categories of specific psychological disorders which are grouped into various classes on the basis of shared characteristics. See, in the viva or in the exam, this question could be of 2 marks. If you are asked why the classification is necessary, then the 2 points I told you before, you can again just go back and you can listen again what are the reasons. And the other thing that could be asked is that what are the two organizations which help us to classify these psychological disorders. See, the American Psychiatric Association, okay, has published an official manual describing and classifying various kinds of psychological disorders. That manual is called Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder. Various versions of this manual are available in these days. Latest is DSM-5 is the latest version, and then there is WHO, World Health Organization, which has prepared International Classification of Diseases, that is ICD-10, means that is the 10th version is available these days, which is the official classification scheme, and it is being followed in India also. Okay, now in this scheme gives the detail of each disorder with its symptoms and other characteristic features of the disease. Okay, this much you need to revise for classification of psychological disorders. Yes, students. Now we'll start up factors underlying abnormal behavior. It's an important question. In writing part, it comes for 5 marks also sometime. So let's discuss this. In the viva, a part like only sometime the teachers might ask you what are the biological factors or how biological factors influence abnormal behavior. Any particular factor they can pick up. They will not ask you in detail in the viva. Okay. See, you must have, when you study this chapter, you know the importance of the why we need these factors, why we need to study these factors which underlie abnormal behavior in order to understand this complex phenomenon, that is abnormality. We needed different factors, we needed to learn what are the factors or different approaches which came into in order to make us understand the abnormality. Okay, so in this, the first thing is biological factors. Now, since this is revision, I will be discussing point wise what is required to for you to write in biological factors. See, first you can mention about faulty genes, endocrinal imbalances, isn't it? That is, if insulin is not secreted properly, then what type of effects do you get in the body? That is your sugar level. See, if I keep on explaining each and everything, then it won't be a revision video. So let me stick it to the revision purpose only. Then you can mention about the neurotransmitters. Okay, that is problems in transmission of the messages from one neuron to another. If the neurotransmitters are not, activities of the neurotransmitters are not proper, then it might create problems. It might lead to various disorders, psychological disorders like anxiety disorders or schizophrenia. As you all know, anxiety disorders have been linked to low activity of a neurotransmitter called gamma, and then GABA, schizophrenia, to excess as schizophrenia to the excess activity of dopamine. So this you can revise for this biological factors. Then genetic factors are also linked to mood disorders, schizophrenia, mental retardation, and other psychological factors. Okay, so now let us discuss about the psychological model, psychological factors. See, in this maternal deprivation, faulty parent child, you can, as the points which I am speaking now, you can very well arrange in the same flowchart and increase your flowchart, and that only you can put up in your answer booklets in the exam. See, under psychological model, psychological factors, you can write maternal deprivation, faulty parent child relationship, maladaptive family structure, and severe distress. You are aware of all these factors which disturbs the individual psychologically. Then we can discuss under psychological factors, as I had put in the flowchart also, that there are four views, four models associated with it. First is psychodynamic model. In this, in short, we will be discussing just now, abnormal symptoms are viewed as a result of conflicts between id, ego, and superego, isn't it? As you know, Freud has always considered that if there is problem in the personality structure, personality structure according to the Freud is composed of id, ego and superego. So if there are any problem, if there is any problem in this, then that can lead to psychological problems according to the psychodynamic model. Then next model that we'll be discussing is behavioral model. Both normal and abnormal behaviors are learned, and psychological disorders are the result of learning maladaptive ways of behaving. Isn't it? This one line is sufficient for behavioral model. That is, कि anything which a child has learned accidentally, okay, or intentionally, whatever you can say, but if it is, faulty, then it leads to psychological problems. Then cognitive model, assumption and attitudes about themselves that are irrational, okay, thinking in illogical ways and making overgeneralization. Then humanistic existential model, as you all know, that people at time feel lonely. Okay. Now this feeling is leads to various psychological disorders. Now total freedom to give meaning to our existence or to avoid that responsibility leads to a dysfunctional life. This line can be written for humanistic existential model in short. Now let's revise socio-cultural factors which affect our behavior. War and violence, group prejudice and discrimination, economic and employment problems, and rapid socialist change, which could create stress in us and lead to various psychological disorders. Then last, that is in this flowchart mentioned, diathesis stress model. This model states that psychological disorders develop when a diathesis, that is biological predisposition to the disorder, is set off by a stressful situation. See, when you had studied this model, you must be remembering that there are certain people who are vulnerable to some particular disease, okay, due to their biological aberrations. Okay, so right now we'll complete this revision with this point only, and rest of the chapter we will cover in other part. Thanks for watching my videos. Please like, share and subscribe.